Live from the SABC's Auckland Park studios, welcome to this week's second edition of the Watchdog. My name is Hlaudi Motsoeneng, and on the show tonight...
I'm an intellectual lecture.
The Special Tribunal lectures former SABC COO Hlaudi Motsoeneng on how to manage public money. He and several other former executives must now pay back the money. Where to now for Transnet's divided workers? We speak to two unions, one that has accepted the 6% wage increase offer and the other that has not. We also speak to the IEC's new chairperson, who begins his tenure on the same day he hosts the 5th General Assembly of Electoral Bodies. All this and more coming up in tonight's episode of The Watchdog, which starts right now. The Special Tribunal has declared that the 2016 decision by the SABC to award 50,000 rands each to 53 musicians must be declared unlawful, irregular, invalid, and should be set aside. This comes after the SABC and the Special Investigating Unit had jointly instituted legal proceedings to recover money paid to music legends in 2016. Former SABC Chief Operating Officer Hlaudi Motsoeneng, together with 9 former executives, had taken a decision to pay artists 2 million rands for their contribution to the industry. Other former SABC executives implicated include Audrey Rapila, who was the Chief Financial Officer, Hlaudi Motsoeneng, who was the head of sport, Nomsa Piliso, who was the head of television, Simon Tebele, who headed news and current affairs, Besi Tugwana, who was the head of corporate affairs, Chifiwa Mlaudzi, who was leading commercial enterprises. There are, of course, several others to that list. Joining us on the line, we do have the Special Tribunal spokesperson, and that's Advocate Selby Makoto. Advocates, good evening. Thanks very much for your time. A very interesting finding indeed. Let's go back perhaps to what the special, the SIU actually found following its investigations.
Thank you very much for your good evening and good evening to the viewers. By way of background, this matter actually arose in January 2021 when the Special Investigating Unit and the SIU and the SABC, came to the Special Tribunal to institute civil recovery proceedings. At the time, it was alleged that the SABC had actually taken a decision in 2016. There were 2 decisions, one in July of 2016 and the other in September of 2016, to award 53 out of the 108 music legends. There was a project that was giving the music legends an amount of 50,000 rands each. This was actually at the center of the dispute in the sense that... hello?
Yes, I'm listening, sir.
Oh, yes. No, this was actually the center of the dispute in the sense that various allegations at the time were to the effect that the SABC, this project having been initiated by Mr. Motsoeneng, had actually not been authorized by the board. And the various issues of contention included the fact that there was no policy in place, no budget in place, no approval, and this was not in the annual plan as well as the operational plans. The matter had actually been before the Special Tribunal since January 2021, and as we were moving towards this particular hearing, along the way, an interlocutory application was brought in by the supporters of Mr. Motsoeneng, who call themselves the music legend supporters. And as and when they came through, they wanted this matter to be out of the Special Tribunal completely. But we had to go ahead, and today the judgment that has been handed down actually lays down two legal principles. Firstly is the reviewing and setting aside of an invalid, irregular, and unlawful decision by the SABC. And in a nutshell, it means that whoever might come afterwards would not be in a position to claim anything from the SABC. But another legal principle, Vuyo, is that the matter had prescribed. Our finding as a Special Tribunal was that this matter was brought to the attention of the SABC way back in August 2017, as soon as the interim board at the time came in. They commissioned a forensic report, it was tabled, and no action was taken up until the time when the SIU investigated the matter. The SIU report was read in July of 2020, and it was only in January of 2021 that both the SIU and the SABC had come to the Special Tribunal. But looking at the evidence and actually applying the law, we found that the matter had prescribed, and as such, it was going to be almost impossible for the SABC to recover the cumulative 2.5 million that is said to have been paid to the 53 million, to the 53 music legends.
I understand it's not all the executives who are going to have to pay. One of them had actually agreed to pay her portion. Is that correct?
In principle, most of the executives at the time sat on the executive management committee of the SABC and largely on its operational plan. So during evidence, it was pointed out to the Special Tribunal that some of the executives at the time did not know what actually was transpiring, because the project in question had not been tabled anywhere. It was just the initiative of Mr. Motsoeneng who had actually taken through to the various executives. So the argument was that they would not be personally held liable because they did not actually take part in this particular matter. But the judgment actually points to the fact that Mr. Motsoeneng, Ms. Rapela, and Mr. Aguma had actually approved and supported this, and actually had to approach one of the cost centers at the SABC for payment of the 53 music legends.
Of course, I mean, an important thing about this is that I suppose also a lesson, or something that continues to be a lesson for executives, is that you cannot make populist decisions, you know, for which there are no policies. But also there are consequences in that when you do such, you will then be required to pay out of your pocket. Precisely the point.
The judgment is quite explicit in that space, because one of the grounds for reviewing this decision was that in the absence of a policy, in the absence of any framework, in the absence of any budgetary process in place, it would then be difficult then to implement a decision like this. But again, from a governance point of view, it was also proper at the time for the interim board, upon being privy to the facts as they appeared in the forensic report which they commissioned, to immediately act and recover the monies where possible. And at that time, because it was still within the prescribed period, the monies would have been recovered. An announcement was just made on one of the SABC's breakfast shows that there is this project. People came up, clapped hands, only to realize that there was no policy in place. So it is a very important governance issue as well, that as and when there is a forensic report in place with recommendations, they should be immediately acted upon, because as they come to the courts, there is nothing that we can do except that we had to apply the law, and now 2.5 million could not therefore not be recovered based on this delays in terms of instituting or acting on the recommendations of the forensic report.
And I understand they also have to pay the costs of the SIU.
Yes, in this instance, one of the orders is that that should be the case. There was a lot of to and fro in as far as this matter is concerned. Various applications came along the way, but in the end, the judgment as it stands, it orders that some of the respondents, most of the evidence, I should say, pointed to Mr. Motsoeneng's conduct, because one of the things that he had said at the time was that he would approach, for instance, multi-choice to fund this particular program. But during evidence, it was not clear as to how this funding was going to be sourced, whether there were any policies in place to guide in relation to the sourcing of funds thereof. And this project cumulatively came to 9 million, and what could be shown before the Special Tribunal in terms of what was going to be raised was 5 million. So it was not clear where the 4 million shortfall would come from.
Mm-hmm. Well, of course, I mean, among the beneficiaries are such legends as Blondie Makiene, Maralo, the late Steve Kekana, Abigail Akubeg. And I remember at some point, Advocate, I think a question was posed as to why the beneficiaries weren't a part of the case. Does the ruling address that?
It does. It does, in the sense that it is not clear, it had not been specified nor explicitly stated as to what criteria was used to identify the so-called music legends. All in all, the list that was submitted was 180. And out of the 180, only 53 million each got 50,000 rand each. So what we are addressing is that beyond this, they should not, because the decision actually stood up until the judgment was handed down, which then nullifies the judgment in its entirety, the decision rather, in its entirety. So the criteria is one other issue that was contested, and a finding has been made that there was no such clear criteria as to how did Mr. Motsoeneng and or the executive at the time identify the deserving music legends.
Mm-hmm. But the ruling itself doesn't speak to whether or not the beneficiaries should return the money, just for clarity.
The issue of the beneficiaries, Vuyo, is addressed primarily on the paragraphs that deals with the issue of prescription. Had this matter been enrolled, being investigated, and being brought to the Special Tribunal within the prescribed period, it was going to be easy for the recoveries to be made. Now an amount of 2.4 million has been paid to the 53 million, to the 53 legends, music legends through this unbudgeted project. It is then difficult for the applicants, being the SABC and the SIU, to recover anything, mostly because the matter was brought outside the 3-year normal prescription period.
Advocate, let me thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, Vuyo. Good evening further to you and the viewers.
Thank you so much, Advocate Hlaudi Motsoeneng, who is the spokesperson of the Special Tribunal. The Special Tribunal today declaring that the 2016 decision by the SABC executives led by Hlaudi Motsoeneng to award 50,000 rands each to 53 musicians be declared unlawful, irregular, and invalid, and therefore should be set aside. The executives must now pay back that money to the SABC. Up next, where to now for Transnet's divided workers? We speak to two unions, one that has accepted the 6% wage offer and another that has not. Welcome back. Transnet workers belonging to the majority United National Transport Union are back at work following a 6% wage agreement with the employer. This brought an end to the two-week strike by UNTU. South African Transport and Allied Workers Union members, though, have rejected the offer, vowing to intensify the strike action.
A handful of Transnet workers affiliated to SATAU gathered outside the Cassini depot in Johannesburg to continue with their demonstration. A different picture from last week, as today's SATAU members are at it alone.
Members of SATAU be aware that the strike is still continuing. Under the capable leadership of Jack Mazibuka and Mhlubulwana, we are led. They instructed us to actually continue with the picketing and the industrial action. And we are behind that position. And we are rejecting this sell-out position of this 6% and the whole package. They are engaged on the ongoing engagement with the management of Transnet.
Their colleagues belonging to UNTU have returned to work following a wage agreement with the employer. The move has angered some SATAU members that have accused rival union UNTU of disregarding their contribution at the bargaining council.
The agreement that was signed by UNTU is lots of things that are not clear. Firstly, you talk about the retrenchment, the privatization, and coming to this wage, it's not even above the inflation rate. We are here. Remember, here underground, we always neglect our families, day and night. And it's how now management is repaying us.
SATAU members are steadfast in their rejection of the 6% wage offer, with the union's national office bearers expected to join in on the picket at the ports in KwaZulu-Natal. UNTU says the further demonstrations will have little impact, with their focus now being on recovering the economy.
Our members are back at work. I think it's an exciting time, not just for Transnet, but also for the economy. The economy can get back on track and the country can start moving forward. So we're still the majority union in TPT as well. With regards to their protracted strike action, because as a majority union we have signed the agreement, their strike basically becomes unprotected now. And we foresee that they might be returning to work in the next couple of days.
Transnet says the priority is to immediately implement recovery plans at affected depots, a move welcomed by President Cyril Ramaphosa, who says the end to the strike action will help the country's ailing economy.
The union that represents some 53% of the workers, UNTU, has signed, as it was announced, and we're hoping that the negotiations with the other union, SATAU, will also be successful. We are concerned about the Transnet strike because Transnet is really the artery, the main artery of our economy, and the stoppage of work at Transnet impacts negatively on all sectors of our economy, and a continued strike could threaten jobs not only in Transnet, but right across a number of sectors.
It's business as usual at some Transnet facilities across the country, with the company saying it will now be focusing on clearing any backlog across its port and rail systems. SATAU, on the other hand, continues with the downing of tools, with the union saying it has strategic positions within the company and it will continue to engage with the Transnet management on their demands. Hlaudi, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Joining me now on the line is the General Secretary of the United National Transport Union, Kobus van Vieren, and his SATAU counterpart, and that is Jack Mazibuko. Good evening to both of you, gentlemen. Thank you very much for your time. If I may start with you, Kobus, not all your demands were met, but you nevertheless decided to accept this last offer and go back to work.
Good evening and good evening to the viewers. Yes, I think it would be prudent to explain what would happen if we did not accept the offer. So, as you know, this was a Section 150 process facilitated by 3 different CCMA commissioners. And if we did not meet common ground with Transnet at this point in time based upon the CCMA commissioners' proposals, then that process would have failed, and therefore the parties would have returned to their original positions, which, if you look at Transnet's position, that was a 4% across the board increase. So we would have had to start negotiating from there.
Jack, you having none of it, it's a luta continua for you.
No, thank you very much, Boyo. Let me greet my comrade, Kobus. It is true what Kobus is saying. We had the facilitated process with the CCMA commissioners, and their recommendations, we must explain that they are without prejudice. It means they are not forcing any other party to consider them. But after UNTU have signed, SATAU, we have written a letter to management and we have started to engage with management. In our letter, we have requested them to give us an opportunity up until Thursday. We want to revisit certain issues that we are not content with. And as soon as we get a mandate from our members, we'll revert back to management and to tell them whether we sign the agreement or not.
I heard the CEO of Transnet speaking on a radio program saying you did meet today and you are continuing to engage. Did today's conversation give you any hope that you may be on the verge of a resolution?
Yes, I can confirm that our discussion with Transnet indeed gave us a hope. We are optimistic that we might find a solution to the problem, not later than the end of the business tomorrow. As things stand now, we are still crisscrossing the country, briefing our members about the engagement that we have with Transnet, which we think will bear the positive result.
What are the key issues that are still outstanding from where SATAU is sitting?
The first issue that SATAU was having concern is that the agreement was not explicit when it talked about the no retrenchment. We strongly believe that we have an interest as the organization to protect job securities of our members. And we are not happy that the agreement is a little bit vague when it talks to the issue of retrenchment. The second issue was the increase recommended by the commissioners, which is 6%. Which in our view, we think it was below the inflation rate. When you do the calculations, we strongly believe that our members are not going to get the increase that they were expected to get. But we are finding each other with Transnet on our engagement.
Kobus, is the retrenchments or possible retrenchments an issue for you?
So there's always a possibility of retrenchments. I mean, if you look at the economy and the state that the economy is in, with the economy rate growing at a very limited pace, there is always the risk of companies closing down and retrenchments and restructuring and all of that. However, in the wage agreement, Transnet doesn't say that it is going to embark on retrenchments. It just merely states that if there is a need for a retrenchment or restructuring process to be embarked upon, such process would be guided by the Section 189 stipulations in the Labour Relations Act. And of course, that is a complete legal process on its own. Such a process incorporates the meaningful consultation with Labour, during which Labour would have opportunities to come up with proposals on how the organisation can approach the restructuring and how jobs can be further protected.
I've heard some unionists saying before that on the issue of retrenchments in particular, you have a situation where management is not looking at its own inefficiencies. It's not looking at whether it's got a fit-for-purpose executive and management team, but that it is easy for them to look at the workers wielding a big axe and just chop as and when they feel like doing so. I don't know if you share that sentiment, Kobus.
So we do share the sentiment in some respect. I think my colleague Jack would echo my thoughts around the management structures and the size of the management structures. When and if such a process may be embarked upon in future in any time, one of the very big focus areas from an UNTU perspective would definitely be management and the ratios of management to employees, because we believe that management structures are overinflated. It's like the mushroom effect. There is way too many managers in certain areas, and that would be a very high focus area for us if in the very off chance that such a process is embarked upon.
Has that issue, and in the manner you've expressed it just now, Kobus, been part of the conversations during this process?
No, it's not part of the wage negotiation process, because remember the section, if there is by the off chance a Section 189 process that's going to be embarked upon, it's a legal process on its own. So although the previous wage agreements specifically stated no forced retrenchments, there was VSPs given historically, and that option still remains on the table, even with or without the clause of no retrenchments. So it wasn't part of the wage negotiations. It was a historic clause that has just been carried over and over in the different wage agreements as the years went by.
Jack, I mean, whatever happens over the next a couple of days, give us a sense of how you would describe relations between yourselves as workers and the management at Transnet, because that, I think, is going to determine, the future of the relations between, workers and management. Given also, I mean, it's important, I guess, for South Africans to get that sense, given the importance of Transnet in our economy.
No, thank you very much. I think SATAU positions with regard to its relationship with management. On many times, we have indicated to management that we are committing ourselves to work with them in the interest of the country and in the interest of the economy. But at the same time, we made it very clear that we are not going to compromise our blue-collar employees, the employees that are falling within the bargaining council. Therefore, our relationship will be determined that between whether the management take the employees' interest at heart. If they do so, they have a good relationship with SATAU. We are committed to work with them, engaging on other issues. We are aware that the company is confronted with a number of challenges. Hence, we did not sign the agreement because we felt that majority of our members in this agreement were not covered. To us, job security is very critical, considering that the country now is facing a high level of unemployment, and Transnet cannot play a role in increasing that number. So we are looking forward to continue engaging management on this issue.
And Kobus, I mean, how important is cooperation between yourselves as unions? If I got the numbers correctly, there's about 20% of Transnet workers who are not unionized, but there's also a number of much smaller trade unions as well. And I'm asking this on the back of what we've seen happening in the mining sector, for example, what we've seen happening at ESCOM and at SARS, where the unity of the workers have played a great deal, not only in the sense that you're all speaking the same language, but unions there have used their bargaining power and unity to their advantage. At the end of the day, they got as close as possible to what to their initial demands. Something which, I mean, from the conversations we've been having with them, would not have been achieved had if they were not united and and made deliberate efforts to actually make sure that they stand together.
I think this must not be misinterpreted. Throughout the wage negotiation process, UNTU and SABC has been working together, and my colleague can confirm that. However, when we went out for a mandating process, down to ground level, that's where there was a difference of opinion between the UNTU members and the SABC members. So the UNTU members, when they were mandated, indicated, the majority of the UNTU members indicated that we must accept the offer. And unfortunately, based upon the information that we have, is that the majority of the SABC members indicated that SABC must not accept the offer. So this does not indicate a tear between the unions, in our opinion. It is just a difference of opinion between the members that was mandated.
In other words, the differences are not ideological per se.
No, not ideological at all per se.
And for you, Jack?
No, I share the same sentiment with Gobos. We don't have any differences, except that each and every organization represents the interest of its members. Therefore, when it comes to mandate, we differ, and we believe that SATA will continue to persuade management to consider our members' demands.
And just outside of wage demands, how is the company? Is it a responsive company? Do you have good working relationships between management and the workers? How would you describe that environment, Kobus?
So I would describe that environment as an environment that needs to be built further. So, and I'm specifically relating this to the relationship in regards to trust between the parties. And there's been things that has happened, and this relationship is in a beginning phase, I think. I think through this wage negotiations, there was some groundwork made in regards to building some sort of rapport and some sort of trust between labor and management, but we still have a long way to go. I mean, if you look at the negotiation process when it commenced, Transnet offering a 1%, labor being on a 13.5% as per our mandates, it clearly indicates positional bargaining. And that in its own means that the relationship is not at a mature enough level where we can move away from positional bargaining and go into needs-based bargaining, as an ideal bargaining process should be based upon, on needs, not on positions.
From your vantage point, Jack?
No, I can really confirm what Kobus is saying. We need to work very hard building a good relationship with management. And then management need to be more transparent to labor. And we have seen this thing when we started the wage negotiations. If we were matured enough or there was a good relationship, perhaps we wouldn't even involve the CCMA senior commissioners to facilitate the process. So it's something that we need to work upon. But we appreciate the fact that management side, they are trying to build the relationship, because time to time, parties are consulted before they take the decision. So it's something that we just need to improve.
Gentlemen, let me thank both of you for your time this evening.
Thank you very much.
That's, of course, Jack Mazibuko, who is the General Secretary of SATAU, and his UNTU counterpart, Kobus van Vuren, giving us an update on that Transnet strike. UNTU, of course, has accepted the negotiated offer, while SATAU continues with the strike. But as Jack was saying, over the next couple of days, things may change. There are processes in motion, and he seems all positive that they may just find one another. We hope, for the sake of the economy, that they do indeed. Up next, we speak to the IEC's new chairperson, who begins his tenure on the same day he hosts the 5th General Assembly of Electoral Bodies. That's coming up in a moment. Don't go away. The Independent Electoral Commission will tomorrow assume the role of the chair of the Association of Electoral Bodies for the next 2 years. This, as the Commission will be hosting the 5th General Assembly of those bodies. The Assembly, which is themed Safeguarding Election Management Bodies in the Age of Global Democratic Recession, which starts tomorrow. This will be the first time an event of this nature takes place on the African continent. President Cyril Ramaphosa is expected to welcome and address the delegates at the Assembly. SABC politics reporter Natasha Piri filed this report.
The 5th installment of the General Assembly will be hitting African shores for the very first time since its inception. Close to 120 electoral bodies across the globe will be in attendance. The Commission will take over the chairpersonship of the world body after having served as its deputy chairperson over the last 3 years.
Of course, in our time of chairpersonship, there are certain strategic things that we want to achieve, amongst which each is electoral scholarship. So we're going to be working with South African universities to grant senior degrees in election management as part of our contribution of building an international legacy.
Multiple studies have shown voter apathy, especially amongst the youth. In last year's local government elections, only 8 million people cast their votes out of 26 million citizens who registered to vote. The Assembly will seek to tackle such issues.
So we're going to be discussing measures to mitigate democratic recession. As you can see from throughout the world, there are pockets of people challenging the authenticity of results and challenging the elections as a mechanism of conferring authority on those who govern. So we're going to be discussing how do we respond as election management bodies and devising mitigation measures around that.
As the Chapter 9 institution anticipates to assume the role of chair, it will also be gearing up for the Watershed 2024 national elections. Asked if this will not be a challenge to the Commission, which already has its hands full, this was the response.
It will be, but there are ways to mitigate that. We will be building sufficient capacity within our structure to ensure that there is undivided attention to this important international work without negating and detracting from the work that we need to do to prepare for 2024.
Natasha Piri, SABC News, Johannesburg.
From Cape Town, on the eve of that 5th General Assembly of Electoral Bodies, let's welcome the new chairperson of the IEC, and that's Mr. Mosotho Moepe. Good evening, sir. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you so much, Vuyo, and your viewers. Good evening to you all.
Well, congratulations are in order, but of course, this is not virgin territory for you. You've been there as the chief electoral officer and subsequently as a commissioner.
Yeah, thank you so much, Vuyo, and I'm really humbled. I think this designation is really not a position. It's a call to duty for me and those that I work with. We are humbled that at a time such as this, with so much in the world that is challenging, we are called to punch above our weight, I guess, in the work that we do. South Africa is poised to serve at this time. We have the privilege of having served in this institution from inception, or being a member from inception, and we have been deputy chairperson for 3 years. And so tomorrow we take leadership of this august institution, and we have to say, when we took it, we were at this point, and when we hand it over, we're at a higher level. And that's really what we want to do.
At what point would you say the IEC is right now?
I think we're in a good place. There are challenges, but we are doing well. We financially we have shown that we are a sound institution. We can be trusted. We have a clean audit. We are rated second on the continent, and second because of a very small reason. In this year, I guess when we handle or when we conduct elections next, there will be nothing that should hold us back from claiming the first position. We do well, in comparison to colleagues in the world. We're very well placed, and we're a predominantly thought-leading institution in the work that we do. And so that's really what we want to cultivate in the region, on the continent, but also, with our South-South counterparts and counterparts all over the world.
I mean, not too long ago, you were here, in studio, we were talking about safeguarding democracy, electoral democracy in an age of growing mistrust, which, as you argued on the day, is not something that's unique to South Africa, but it's a global challenge. And there you are now going to chair this World Assembly. Is that the only issue that you are going to be discussing over the next 2 days?
No, there are very interesting things we see our counterparts dealing with. Virtually all of the 120 members have some challenges, and quite a number of those are common. But we are going to look at what are these challenges and what are our counterparts doing to mitigate them. And so we're in a very good situation in that we are preparing for 2024 elections, and we have this conference here today. It'll help us to put in our programs some of those measures that we find useful in our interactions with our colleagues. But we are also going to be able to help colleagues that are here that look at things we do and they say, my goodness, this is something I could be doing in my country, for them to take away. And we are developing relationships amongst practitioners, amongst professionals, amongst election management bodies, amongst electoral stakeholders, even those that are not practicing elections, for example, scholars, to work at finding solutions to these issues. So this is really an important gathering of election management bodies on the one side, but experts and stakeholders on the other.
We South Africans, and this has come up over the last 24 hours again, with reports coming out of Britain about what's going on there. Within the Labour Party, calls for the resignation of the current Prime Minister and the possible return, of good old Boris. Now, it's, from in several platforms, South Africans are talking about how false this whole notion is that we are very unique and we are the only, or perhaps one of a few, very highly politically charged, politically charged countries. And I'm wondering whether, from the conversations that you're having with your peers there, these kinds of things feature at all, and what, whether they think, or whether you get, from conversations, you get a sense that we are indeed unique, as many people often say, or we just, it's the same situation everywhere across the world. There's nothing unique about us.
Well, there's nothing unique absolutely about us. That's the nature of electoral democracy, or democracy in general. When people sometimes claim or use the freedoms they have, but don't attach responsibility to the freedom, these two things must work in tandem. We are finding that our counterparts across the world have challenges, and some of them, I think, bigger challenges than we do. But it's not about how big is someone else's problem and how small is your problem. The issue is, how do we best anticipate, how do we best mitigate, and how do we best deal with those problems when we have them, and how do we inculcate a culture of servicing electoral democracy in the way that it benefits the citizens, those that participate in it. That's really the work that we are called to do, and to build confidence, in other words, in a democracy that works. The world is dealing with these things. We saw at the beginning of this year in the US, the president actually called a meeting of significant countries and said to them, folks, what are we going to do with what we see as democratic recession? How are we going to deal with it? But it is not just those, it's all of us. And that's really what we're trying to do here. So 120 countries across the world that are looking at this, it is a big event. It is really huge.
Of course, you have to build confidence in our electoral democracy, yet by and large, you're not the cause of the mistrust we were talking about, in our class system. Other people should be taking responsibility for that, yet you are the ones who have to fix something that you neither created nor are responsible for.
Well, what I like, in the next 2 days, we will have, the stakeholders in South Africa. We'll have members of the party liaison committee in the National Assembly. We will have the members of the Portfolio Committee on Home Affairs. We'll also have scholars, as I've said, but organized scholars in the body of work that we do. And as I indicated to you the last time, we are now in a much better position ourselves to not skirt around the problem. We now know, we have research that tells us what the problems are. We have to confront those problems. And we have to do so intentionally, we have to be purposeful, and we have to be frank and say, this is the problem which we must deal with. We can't, unless we deal with it in that manner, the problem is never going to go away. And so we have to be a little bolder, and we have been emboldened to do so.
And you hope that not only during the conversations of the next couple of days, but beyond this point, all these important stakeholders will indeed help you as the leadership or at the helm of the leadership core of the commission to really do the work that you are constitutionally mandated to do?
The beauty about the work of the Electoral Commission is that you're not dependent on one set of stakeholders to do the work that you need to do. Of course, you engage with political parties, but we engage with voters, with civil society organizations. And in all of these institutions that we work with, there must be a way in which we find solutions. If no one is interested in the problem of a voter, we will work with the voter. If no one is interested in the problem that civil society have, we will work with civil society. And so we will facilitate the bringing together of all of the stakeholders. That's really where we are headed.
Well, best of luck to you in the job you're appointed to on Friday, and of course the job of leading this world body over the next couple of days and years.
Thank you so much for we're encouraged by yourselves, by so many good people, good citizens in this nation, people who just really do whatever it takes to serve this nation. We know they exist. We see them. We meet them. Many of them are here with us, and we are just so grateful. We pledge to do the best we can to serve you the best from where we are, and never to be tired of trying and finding innovative ways of doing things better every day. But we do not want to cultivate a culture where we are scapegoating. We think we must confront the problems and deal with these problems, and find solutions to them.
Mr. Mapia, thank you very much for your time.
I appreciate it for you.
He is, of course, the newly appointed chairperson of our Independent Electoral Commission. That's our show for tonight. Do join us again tomorrow evening, same time. Good night.